picks here. With this new meta coming about, and I was having a conversation with a lot of the other Malaysian broadcasters, we were all talking about there are just way too many priority picks. Some situational, but some who give free wins. And Wanwan, one of them. Second of all, Julian, where does he really stand? Is he Wanwan level, a high level of pick and ban? He's good, but it's about the pairing.
Yeah, it's very important to think about how the teams want to play around this Julian. So far, we haven't seen more teams play around his enhanced chain as compared to the enhanced scythe. So they're focusing more on using him as an engage tool for his massive crowd control rather than bursting people down too quickly. On the opposite side, though, we can see IDNS instantly picking up two more very meta picks so far at the MSC, the Beatrix, as well as the Xavier.
Yeah, those are solid choices here. Going back to Smartmega real quick, one thing I'm wondering, because we saw some the successfulness of Julian in the jungle mostly, I believe even Demon Kite brought him out. So this is something that we're not used to seeing from the teams in general because, right, he's just available now. So what I am curious if Ryzen actually also decides to take Julian in the jungle here, but there's a Fanny that comes out. So a Fanny and a Masha.
Some really good strong picks coming out from Omega's side, and especially if you have a player who's highly mechanical and can actually pick up that Fanny, it's something that they have to keep in mind. IDNS are going to be locking in the Thamas for themselves. They need some sustain, but the question is, how do they stop Fanny from getting across the map and getting on top of Beatrix? I'm expecting Omega looking for Kufra bans here.
Kufra ban would definitely be a good shout out, but I feel like we've also seen in the past where Kufra, despite being a very obvious counter to these high mobility heroes, does still require a little bit of execution. In the hands of a player that has really high mechanical ability, Fanny can actually still outplay Kufra quite easily. So if anything, IDNS needs a hero that has more confident, more simple and comfortable lockdown. Unfortunately, options like the Franco and Akai have already been taken off the table.
Yeah, that doesn't leave them a lot of options, right? But, I mean, they've got solid choices. These are kind of like, if you want to say, the meta that we're used to seeing with the heroes, right? And again, this is kind of blowing my mind here for Smartmega because this is not typical for them, and this is, again, why they are considered that last and that kind of poison, because you don't really know what's going along the head, the mind, the mastermind of Coach Corvette, and also the players. I mean, they've obviously been practicing different things, so yes, as we mentioned, how does that Julian pair with this? You know, how do you get those combos off that we saw yesterday? So right now, this is not the typical Smartmega we're seeing. They're still going to have two more picks to round this out. But right now, those last bans from IDNS going to be that Brody, so they're taking out the gold laners.
Interesting. There's still Popo and Koopa up for grabs for Omega, but let's not forget that second pick. In the second phase, we'll get that first initial lock-in. So I think there's a couple of ideas that we can go with here. We could expect Beatrix to be moved over into the mid lane if there is a terrible gold lane matchup. That's what I'm suspecting from IDNS. But Omega here, I think at this stage of the game, they're looking over at IDNS and saying, hey, we've got a Xavier, that's fine. Beatrix, that's fine. Nothing really stops our composition as of right now. Let's get rid of this Atlas. Maybe we can force you into it.
So they're definitely targeting very heavily on all of these roam options, not just getting rid of the tanky pick, but even banning out the Natalia beforehand because they want to be able to retain control over the map. We don't have a lot of information on IDNS, but what we do know is that this team is known for playing quite aggressively in the early game. They want to be able to close out games more quickly as compared to their opponents, which is actually quite counterintuitive to what Smart Omega is known for. They have the ability to really come back from tight situations. So this is going to be quite interesting to watch. And IDNS right now really need a solid source of CC.
Well, there's some nice CC right there. They get the Ruby, right? So also, I want to point out the fact that everything that I watched on IDNS with Angelina playing this Xavier, most likely the Xavier's going to Angelina, it was a fantastic performance, a game, and just literally half the time Angelina was carrying on the Xavier. Now, yesterday, I believe the win rate for Xavier is 0%. I think it was picked 3 times and not able to get a win yet. So this might be the time, this might be the team, the player to actually get Xavier on the board here, because right now they've got a lot of CC now, they've got a lot of damage potential, they have the sustain with that famous pick too, but Smart Omega going to answer here with a Rock and a carry.
okay? A good way to peel, a good way to actually isolate enemies, to go for big catches. I'm looking at Smart Omega's composition so far. They've got strong engage, good pick-off potential here, and most importantly, they've got a very clear curve. They have an early game that's relatively strong, and if it goes well, mid-game's going to be a free pass. But let's say it gets into the later stages of the game. What do they have? They still have the carry.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like the curve on Smart Omega right now. It does feel like a very traditional lineup, and I do have to wonder about their early game power meter from both these teams. We already highlighted earlier, Idns likes to play a bit more for that early game, but here they actually have slightly more scaling heroes than you might expect.
For me, if we're going to talk about early game power meter, especially since they lock in this Hilda, right? That's an option they can use here, but I want to say Smart Omega has that early game potential, especially level 4, right? You got the wild charge. That's a huge stun. It's very long. And then you have Fanny, right? Anytime a Fanny is on the opposite side, if they're able to get those cables off the damage and everything else, have a good time in the jungle, it's kind of hard to match some of that damage potential. But let's say we've seen it before too. They whiff the cables, they're not able to connect, then that kind of falls off.
I mean, if we're talking about the early game, right, and especially if we are talking about the cables starting to fall off, then you have to just double down on the early to mid game, hoping that Fanny will be able to be that driving force. But when you're looking at the supports right now, this is Hilda up against Masha, right? Instantly, I'm thinking they're going for the invades. They're looking to slow down this jungle.
Well, I guess we'll find out if that is truly going to be the case, because we now enter the Land of Dawn for the first time on day 2 of MSC 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, Smart Omega are going to be playing on the blue side, and on the opposite end, we got Idns. Will they be able to show us another upset here on the MSC stage?
Interesting. This is a Ruby jungle, right?
Oh.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't see this often.
Yeah, I don't see this often too. I would have expected Ruby probably to kind of take her time here, probably play a support position, but instantly invades start walking through, and Lois has to survive.
Oh, but he is actually able to take the orange buff. Not sure if it's going to be worth it though. First blood gonna go over to Ryzen on the side of Smart Omega.
There you go. That's already starting that early game power spike I was talking about. I mean, in terms of that, you don't want to obviously give that to the Fanny, and now, this could set them up for dominating the early game.
Okay. So let's talk about the early game one more time, except this time, let's keep in mind that Cheku is going to be playing with this Grok in the support position, not the Masha this time, right? So now we're expecting a more defensive playstyle. So I think IDNS made a really smart decision by taking this orange buff, because they can start playing even more defensively and trying to protect Angelina here. Is it going to be enough? No, they find the kill.
Yeah, that's going to be another one going the side of Smart Omega, and in the meantime, we can already see that Ryzen giving them a bit of their own medicine, now going for Loise's orange buff instead. Not gonna let the earlier game steal get to them.
I'll tell you guys this, right? When Chak knew the Chak Mamba is playing Grok, he is not. Maybe let's say 1 out of 10 times he plays very defensively, but the guy will make plays out like that you're not even expecting. He'll use every tool in the kit that he has, plus the flicker to make plays, either save teammates. They've seen it time after time. So right now, paired with what they have, it could be bad.
Ooh, that's a wild charge. Gonna be able to find out Zanri. He's trying to get away. Looks like he will be able to escape thanks to Lois. Zanzanzak now coming in to provide some backup, but Lois dropping real low. Ryzen still on top of the turtle. Renzio dropping low, but it's the Ruby that's gonna be taken out right away. Chaknu managing to escape from the clutches, as well as Ryzen secures the turtle.
I personally think that's a little bit of a misplay coming in from Lois. He could have easily walked towards the gate side to protect himself, and since Angelina was trying his best and he was blocked off, all he had to do was drop his abilities, pray that Lois was able to communicate properly, and move towards that gate to keep Omega in check. Unfortunately, the kill still goes over to Omega, and now this entire early game as we transition into mid is looking in Omega's favor.
This is again the question mark that I have here, right? The Ruby in the jungle. It's something, like I said, we haven't seen much of, and I don't know how well it's going to work. I mean, yes, you have throughout the entire game, you have the CC potential, but you also lose the flicker, right? Like this is what you pick Ruby for usually. Flicker, I'm offended combos. It's just pretty much the same thing as having like the flicker on the Grok, right? So you lose that. I feel like that's losing a lot of what this hero has.
I do agree with you there, but personally, I have a little bit of bias here because I actually do quite enjoy playing Ruby in the jungle myself. It is a hero that's surprisingly deceptive to be utilized in that form here, but you can definitely see that when going up against a hero like the Fanny, Ryzen right now has way more mobility, way more control of the map in comparison.
Down on bot side, Zanri is getting on top of Kelvin real quick, but E2 Max ready to get as Naka comes on through. Instantly, Zanri is taken out. The cartwheel held to the last second to ensure his death.
That was so clean. I mean, Edu Max just literally walked over there, threw that knockup down, and it was a clean kill just like that for Smart Mega. So they're already 3K gold lead here. Idns has to be thinking of a way to just slow this down, like you guys mentioned, right? Because yes, Sudafa, they have a ton of mobility on that Fanny, but rest of the team too is also just rotating very well right now.
Yeah, in comparison, Idns definitely having a little bit of difficulty maintaining control over their side of the map. E2 Max definitely made a big difference in that fight. And also, I do think this is probably the first time we have seen Julian in the mid lane in MSC so far.
No, that's true. Julian in the mid lane, especially when you're up against Xavier. Xavier doesn't naturally have a lot of pushing power until he gets his first 2 items, but now the engagement begins.
Yep, that's a wild charge onto Lois to ensure the retribution, and Ryzen follows it up in hands chain to keep Zanri knocked off a free kill. Again, going over to Omega, now 6-0.
You see what I mean? Chaknu will just make those plays time after time. And so IDNS needs a way to counter that from happening and not putting yourself in that position to get wild charge, because that stun is too long and now they're going to make a play at the bottom.
IZ in a lot of trouble. The flicker forward into Wesker. You cannot count out the Beatrix. E2 Max has to back it off.
Yeah, he kind of felt that. He's like, never mind. He's like, call it off. We'll come back later.
Yeah, you don't really see too many players actually go for a play like that, especially expecting such an important battle spell that can be used defensively for a Beatrix who doesn't have that much mobility. So flickering in front of his face, that again, what an ego challenge.
It is interesting, especially considering when we look at other players as well. Wesker is becoming more and more popular on the Beatrix, and flickering forward to get that big burst damage isn't actually unusual nowadays. But Lois could be out of position, gets caught with the wall charge into the wall, sets up for Kelra. Zanri now coming from the back line. They will be able to find Chaknu, but they find another IZ gonna go down. Zanri in a bit of trouble, but no CC. He will be able to run away.
Yo, Chaknu, this man's game sense is so good. He's keeping an eye on that Beatrix. As soon as Wesker is whipped out, he immediately takes the shots for Kelra, allowing him to just blow through the rest of the team.
Hey man, that's the Chak Mamba for you, right? Like I said, he is a very aggressive just player in general, so that's why when he picks these heroes, you know, the Kufras, the Groks, like this is when he gets to shine the most. And now, big damn.
That's rough, but a nighttime event, a 2-man dawning light, not enough damage though, and Lena now out of mana. IZ getting some good snipes, but E2 Max, he knows what's coming, juking him out, being able to escape in the top lane as well. There was an attempt onto Sun, but he was able to escape from the Grok and the carry.
Good movement coming in from E2 Max for now, but topside, I think, you know, Thamus isn't having much of a fun time, not that they've rotated after breaking tier 1 and even threatening Turtle.
Ryzen gets hooked, but still able to secure the Turtle with retribution. IZ now out of position, mega kill going over to Ryzen. Lois now getting caught out by E2 Max with the 2-man in hand chain. Dawning Light not going to matter at all, as Lois is now the target carry, even managing to pick off the tower in the mid lane. Killing spree going over to E2 Max.
This is tough. We're talking about 1,000 gold per minute here, boys. I mean, it's 7 minutes in, 7K gold lead for Smart Omega here, and just look at everybody. I mean, they're all, they gotta have, what, 2-3 items all by now, and it's just play after play. This is literally the best we've seen Julian play in the mid lane. He's just finding the CC, the knockouts where he needs to, and then it's all good.
Yeah, well, currently they're at 1.5 items once they hit the 28K mark. I think they'll have about 2 items at that stage, but it's tough because right now the only member who's doing decently well is going to be this Thamus on bot side, and Omega switching things up one more time. Instead of trying to push up on that top side, they want to play for this next Lord objective and are willing to give up that tier 1 on top side because they don't want to deal with Sun. They want to keep on pressing their advantage in this 4v4.
Yeah, I am really loving the rotations of Smart Omega now, and we can see Ryzen instantly going in. He has his eyes on the Xavier and will be able to claim his prize. Now Kelra going in the massive damage, secures the enemy gold laner, right? And even taking the tower aggro for a short while charge, unfortunately, going to miss on Zanri, but that is 2 kills for nothing.
We have to take a look at the items here because there is no way. I mean, just look at the damage being pumped out here. I mean, even Kelra, right? You saw it was like 1-2, and the health bar was deleted here on the side of IDNS. So we're talking about 10k gold lead at this point, right? The next big objective is going to be that first Lord. And honestly, IDNS is going to have a hard time even if they want to try to contest that.
Yeah, I mean, a 10k gold lead in most situations is checkmate. And this early in the game, 9 minutes as the Lord is spawning, Omega are in prime position for the checkmate. 2 as tier 2 now getting threatened.
Trying to go for the wild charge, but gets stopped by the I'm Offended. E2 Max onto Sun in the side. The Dawning Light literally doing no damage at this point as Chaknu finds the wild charge onto the hill. That's Zanri gonna go down to Keldra. Unstoppable streak. Renzio taking most of the heat as Sun wants to find something, but IDNS are just too far behind.
So that's the thing, like there's actually some damage potential here. Now we can actually take a look at the items, Gideon.
Yep, 3 items already on Kelra, and he's been going for the full crit build this time. Windtalker into Scarlet Phantom, into Berserker's Fury. He has more than enough damage, and as long as his team outscales him with just buying raw armor, honestly, at this stage of the game, I don't think Angelina will be able to catch up in time for a Luminous Lord push.
Something else I kind of want to highlight too is the fact that E2 Max is actually playing a completely different Julian build from all we've seen so far. He went the Calamity Reaper, Concentrated Energy, and then the Brute Force Breastplate. This is more of a brawler type Julian build.
I think this is what makes him so valuable, right? You know, the flexibility, not only in the lanes, but also the way that you can build Julian as a hero himself. This is what makes it so strong because, I mean, we've seen it now time after time, right? So far in these last 2 days where you can throw him in the jungle, build him the way you want to as an assassin or as a bruiser now, right, in the mid lane. And also with taking Mystery Shop where you can get those items a little bit faster, paired with the type of pace you set here for this game and the gold lead, man, you're going to do so much for your team here.
I mean, let's not forget that if Jakku is looking for the engages, somebody's got to peel, and E2 Max, he can do both.
That's a lot of damage from the enhanced scythe. Lois and Izzy being poked out quite heavily, but Nibiru's Passion should be able to clear up the Lord. Omega, though, not sure if they're happy with that. Do they want to look for more?
Right now, they're going to continue the siege on the base here of IDNS. Can actually still defend this one. They should be able to clear it. They have great clearing potential. Like, they can buy time, but how much time do you need to buy here?
Well, I think we're looking at IDNS is ideally wanting to get Angelina to about 3 items. I think he just recently purchased his 2nd. He needs to get his 3rd. He's fixed his mana issue. He will be able to spam Billy. He has more than enough cooldowns. And a high ground defense of 5 minutes is going to... It's going to be a little difficult with the 14k gold lead that Omega has. They're eventually going to be able to muscle their way in. And knowing how Chaknu plays, if he can get 3 knocked up with that wild charge, I think that'll be game over.
I feel like at this point of the game, though, you don't even need the 3-man knockup anymore. Omega being 14k gold ahead of IDNS just means that as long as they're not directly feeding themselves to the enemy, they should have a pretty clear path to victory. Honestly, I think if they wanted to brute force their way into the base, they don't even need to wait for the Lord.
Nah, I beg to differ. This is Omega. They aren't playing like RSGPH. They're not boring. They want to be interesting, and I know Chaknu, for a fact, is going to be looking for a cool play.
He wants what we like to call the TikTok highlights.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what he wants.
That's fair.
So, yeah, I can see, I've seen it happen before, right? He is, if there's any moment, even if it's just one person, but it's better if it's 3, right? He will find that moment, and this is exactly what IDNS needs to do, right? Pair up a little bit, because you can't actually go anywhere alone because of you're so far behind here. But as the game goes on, you might be able to catch up on some of the itemization where you can start to see some form of maybe split pushing going on, but right now, they're pretty much stuck together here or in their base.
The Luminous Lord has now officially spawned once again, and Smart Omega will indeed be going for it. We can see that Chaknu and Renzio are being left to defend the lane, to make sure they are pushed out so that IDNS remains in their base. Lord gonna go over to Omega. An interesting purchase purchase as well. Bloodlust Axe on Kelra.
Yeah, Kelra just needs to live. I think he's one of the more important members here because at this stage of the game, we're seeing that Ryzen, yes, he's almost about max items. He has more than enough damage, but even if he dies, he still has to fall back onto Kelra. And I don't think Ryzen by himself, even with a purple buff, can 1v5. Kelra can definitely do that.
You know, I just think this march-in is obvious. This will actually crack open the base of IDNS, right? So this is the time for them to show what they're made of here in terms of having the defense. They have great clear, but can they actually stop this game from ending?
I guess we'll see. Chaknu coming in, looking for the play with the Concealed Lord, already breaking down mid inhib, top inhib, falling to E2 max as well. Smart Omega want to break this right open, but the Lord is cleared out. Rencio doing a lot of damage to Angelina in the back line. E2 max gonna miss the chain, not quite enough to finish off Izzy. As Chaknu finds the two-man wall charge, monster kill, going over to Kelra. They find one, they find two. IDNS is breaking apart, and the crystal is going to fall in favor of Smart Omega.
Well, there it is. That was the moment he was waiting for, and it was actually just inevitable. It was about time. The lead was massive.